Alrighty then, everybody. Welcome to another magnificent Terran Tuesday. We're here with our great authors, the Black Knight and R.H. Snow, who
Right.
are ready to go. How you guys doing today?
Ooh,
Hello.
hi. Can you hear me?
Coming through
Yes.
loud and clear, loud and
Yes.
clear.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, we have some weirdness with for some reason my bandwidth has just been weird, so it's like showing only 3 bars. So if you can hear me, I'm a happy camper right now. Woohoo!
Yeah, we can
Excellent.
hear you loud and clear, as Jim said. Yeah. How are you?
Perfect.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm actually got everybody going off to church right now, and I've got them on their way. They're doing the ham radio licensing group that we actually do, where we have
All
prayer
right.
and pie at the same time, and
Very
we work
fine.
on ham
Uh,
radio operator stuff. So Mr. Bud, who is like one of my favorite people on the planet, and he's an old ham radio operator. You can see it in his
Yeah.
eyes. Talks it like the electric, current flows from him like a spirit, and he's bringing a pineapple coconut cream pie that he's
Oh,
made his own self with heavy cream. He's like the king of pies. And so, in addition to being wise in the ways of radios, he's wise in the ways of pies. So that's happening tonight. But I'm here with you because I love you, and because we're
I
talking about
hope
woohoo.
I hope they do save you a piece of that pie. It
Oh, they are
sounds
just very nice.
glorious.
But yeah,
that does
Yeah,
sound good.
yeah.
pie because it's got milk in it, and milk will make me very sick. And so,
Oh,
Americans, I have trouble with lactose intolerance
wait,
and
wait, wait.
allergy.
Does that mean that you can't eat the most glorious cheese on the planet?
Yes, it means pretty
Uh,
much I'm like a vegan, but with meat and eggs.
yeah.
Horrible. But okay, I have a good life. I'm not going to complain because I'm actually alive and I get to not suffer. And I'm very
Yes,
blessed. It's
but
still hard.
cheese,
I
cheese.
I know. I'm sorry.
No.
I offended you. I'm sorry. I even told you. It's really hard.
Nah,
Yeah,
nah.
my whole life's been that
I'm
way.
joking.
So
I'm joking.
sure, sure.
Ah,
I'm a lesser human now because I don't have any cheese.
sure. Well, otherwise, in my case, I'm fine. I'm okay.
Yeah,
I had plenty of sleep. Today I did a
finally.
mixture of edits. I wrote the Terran Tuesday Tanka poem, which came
Ooh, nice.
out quite well. And I also wrote the last chapter about the hamster loop, which that would be the last one, the last chapter
Oh,
about him. And I was debating like for the past 2 hours. I was debating what should I write next for Terran Tuesday, and I may even leave it to the vote.
Ooh.
I'll post something on my Substack. Otherwise, I have tied it nicely with like the last chapter. I have tied it nicely with another character, another story, which of course it's set in the same universe. But mysterious black plastic coat wearing man
Ooh.
with cyber glasses and is called the answer. Well, at least that's what he's
Ooh,
calling
nice.
himself. And last time I checked, a bunch of my readers were clamoring and complaining that they want more of him.
Ooh, you got a hit on your hands.
But I also have to like,
Hammering.
I don't know. I have a ton of stuff to write this year. I don't know if I'll be able to pull this off somehow.
You can. You can do it.
Uh,
Okay,
but
okay.
book eight, it's waiting at 50%.
Ooh.
It needs to be finished. Needs to be completed. It's been too long.
Oh my
But
gosh.
but I'm going on a tangent. So today we are about to talk uh, maps,
Yes.
and before the stream, me and James had a like short chat, and we mentioned that there was a new technology. Well, it's an old technology, it's the lidar technology, but they are using AI
Oh yeah.
to compile the data
Mm-hmm.
so it can produce better results and save time. And they have been like scanning under the pyramids, and if
Oh yeah.
you, I don't know if you notice, there are like a ton of videos debating what actually does that map, that lidar map that they made actually show, because some people think that it's like a megalithic structure under the pyramids. They think that they're like giant columns, and like it's quite the divisive topic right now. My personal opinion is that there are shafts, stone quarry shafts, because you know the entire Giza plateau is sensor,
Uh-huh.
and they've been quarrying material.
Yes.
So that's my humble opinion, as someone who read a lot about the antiquity and how they built stuff and how they appropriated megalithic construction, which they never built. They had nothing to do with it, but they said that like we built it, and they placed like tiny stones atop the giant stones. Let's say in Baalbek, for example, the Romans appropriated it, and there are nice maps of it, of this, from Google Earth, I think, which you can see all the giant stones and like the tiny itsy bitsy pebble like stones on top. So yeah, what do you think about that?
James, you go
Yeah.
first because I've already been talking.
Yeah. So I think it's very interesting and something that I've often come across because I do look into like geology and stuff like that. And it's rare that you'll come across something that's kind of on the surface of the earth that hasn't been disturbed by somebody else at another time. It's quite natural when that occurs. So I'm not too surprised that you had one mighty civilization possibly building upon another. Um, I draw some inspiration for that within my own world, which I've yet to map out those particular areas. I have a single map I'll be showing off
Oh,
later. But RH,
Nice.
no, I'm actually kind of interested in what you have to say because you sent me a lot of maps
Jill,
to show
yeah,
off.
we'll go over those in just a minute. But when we'll talk about that, I guess we'll bring them up one by one. Just let me know if you want to do that. And so I love maps. I'm very excited about this subject because I enjoy actually looking at maps, like looking at Google Earth and just enjoying it. So this whole thing about the pyramids is, of course, very exciting to me. LiDAR has been, in use for a while, and the fact that they came out with this, and at first I was like, oh, this has got to be, it's there somebody being sensationalistic. No, they're not. It's based on scientific evidence that we have so far. I've looked at the original documents that they have out there, and they're dead serious about this. So the next course of action, of course, is to go there, to actually physically go there. But when the ability to see into the earth with lidar, to actually be able to look and find structures and things that have been missing for thousands of years that nobody's been able to see, is so thrilling. And one of the things that when we start talking about maps and the real world applications, of course, when we talk about just Google Earth, being able to go on Google Earth and find ancient structures. I love doing that. I love going to the Sahara and to the Middle East portions of Google Earth and just zooming in to find ancient structures, because that is the bare bones of the earth swept clean, and all of the flora and fauna are missing. There's nothing there except what has been made to last. And we still can find ancient structures that hold back the sands, possibly thousands of years old, as people attempted to stop the encroaching sand dunes on what was once the green Sahara. And you can find these structures still today, going in and using Google Earth. And that's part of what led me to start making my own maps, actually, for my books, was that I had all of these wonderful hours that I had spent studying maps of the real world. And I have real world landmarks in my story because it's about a near future Texas. And so, of course, I extensively rely on Google Earth to help me find out where my, people are going and how long it's going to take them to get there, how long it takes a horse to travel 12 miles as opposed to a man. And so in using those things, it was natural for me to go ahead and go out and make my own maps for my books. And now we're on book 9, of course, and I've got pretty much a map is included with each book. That not always a new one. We usually have a map for every 2 or 3 books. But as we're getting further and further into the series, we now have a new map each time the world expands. And so we keep taking it outward further and further. And so in using that technology and the ancient mysteries that are being seen just from the real world, and then translating that into our fantasy worlds, I think that the maps are an incredibly valuable tool for the writer, but they're also a wonderful tool for the reader. There are people who will literally buy a book just because it has a map in it. A beautiful map makes a book worth everything. It can be the most dry, dead subject known to man. If it has a beautiful map in the front of it, it can transform the experience because it takes the reader to that place. And we're going to be talking about some of the more famous maps, some of the ones that I've found from authors that I love, and maybe you guys have some too that you'd like to mention in the chat or mention here on the stream. But I have some that I've chosen that are specifically because in finding them and finding that portion of that world laid out for me, it has enhanced my life, and I want to have it enhance yours too.
Definitely. I know I have one single map, but it's in everything I release. Everybody does appreciate maps, and I do have your long let's see, maybe 10-ish list of maps that you have sent.
Yeah, I will. Let's start just one at a time. I don't want to. We'll go to the other ones later, but I want to start off one at a time. Which one's let's see, we have first on the list. What do you see there?
Okay.
Let's look at the other author. Let's start with Jonathan Swift.
Jonathan Swift. All right.
It's one of the first maps that was included for a fantasy, I believe. And let's look at that. I think we've got it right there.
Let's see, Jonathan Swift. Give me a second because they're labeled separately when I saved them.
It should be the first in line. See, one of the first in line. Let's see, Gulliver's Travels. It has Benjamin Mott written on it.
Okay, yes.
Let's go to that one first. That's one of the earlier ones.
Okay. Let me just go ahead and bring up my little camera switcher here.
There we go. Now, I'll say that this is a fantasy map for most of us, and especially at that time when these maps were drawn. Our first encounters with maps usually actually were in Sunday school or in church, where a lot of us first saw the maps that were in our Bibles. And I always love a good Bible map. There's usually something that will have the travels of Jesus, something that would have the ancient world, and it would include Rome, especially when you get into the New Testament. And so a lot of these maps will mirror the maps from those times that were included in these books. And especially after, of course, the Gutenberg press was invented, maps became extraordinarily popular. Anything that could reproduce something like that was amazing. And so you have so many beautiful maps out there. Any old map to me is extraordinary. This is different because it is a fantasy world. It actually has something interesting. If you look up in the corner, you'll see that this is Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. But there's a real world application there. In that top right-hand corner, you'll see the word Sumatra, because they actually felt like Lilliput would be somewhere near Sumatra. So we have this wonderful island nation, and they wanted to have it, I believe, out near the Indonesian islands. So we have this little map of it looks like Lilliput, and we can't really read it here, and it talks about how it was discovered, and then of course Diamond's Land. His story, because this is satire first of all, but it's also a story, a fantasy story, where the most famous part of it, of course, is where Gulliver goes to the island of Lilliput, where the little people live, and they tie him down, and we see Gulliver tied down by the Lilliputians, and of course he breaks free, and he becomes very important in their culture because he helps them build things and make stuff happen for them, and he actually stops a war from occurring in the original book. And this was a very popular book, and so this wonderful little map, which is sort of just a very simple line art with some shading on it. It does have, it looks like some emblems on it. It looks like there's a little ship out there, and we have beautiful, okay, I'm a font nerd. I really love calligraphy and fonts. And so here we see a nice, it looks like a serif Roman style type with some italics on there and beautiful things. Really impressive work. And this is all done probably in ink, maybe sketched in briefly with a little bit of graphite, but it, of course, would have been done on a parchment. And to have this included in the book was a wonderful thing for the readers of that time. They wanted to look over and see this is almost like a real place. And so they were very excited to have this in the book. And this is our first encounter with probably with fantasy worlds as opposed to real world settings in maps. And I'm sure that there will be somebody out there who knows of another example that's earlier. And I'm sure there are many from folklore that will be included. And if we can find those, that would be awesome. But this is the ones I've learned from literature. So I wanted to include that one. The next one we want to look at is probably the Sundering Flood. That's actually the one that's down right from it. It's William Morris, 1897.
Okay.
And now this is just, it's impressive because we start to see some of the influences that Tolkien had. For most of us, when we think of a fantasy map, we think of Tolkien. Tolkien to us is our sort of our guide. It's who we first saw. The beautiful line art and the things that he made are so evocative. Well, this is part of his influence here, is actually from a book written in 1897, and it's William Morris, The Sundering Flood. Let me know when you can get that up.
Yes, I got it right here.
You're good at this. You're the best sandwich. Okay, so look at this. Best sandwich ever. We have this really neat little, just an artistic. It doesn't attempt to be super realistic, unlike the previous one, which looks like a real cartographer's map, but it's still very involved. What did you want to say about this?
It doesn't have to be super accurate because, like, a lot of the older maps, especially from the Age of Sail, and they even had like monsters, sea monsters and stuff drawn on them. So yeah, it doesn't have to be giga accurate like we have in the digital age. You just have to be like very, very, very close approximation of what they actually saw.
Yeah. Well, and something that's interesting, and we're going to see this more when we start looking at Tolkien's maps. We see the geographic symbols that they use for during geographic surveys. And cartographers, where you have the Lilliputian map is more of a cartographic map. It's actually done in the style of a realistic cartographic map. A geographic survey is a very stylized map. It is meant to take you to features in the landscape. And while it may have topographic rings, some of them do, for a lot of them, it's just symbols. What's the fan shape that forms a looks like a little fan. It's actually for the swamp, and you'll see repeated symbols for swamps, for mountains, for other things. And we have an innate sense of what those look like because many of us were taught in school how to read geographic maps. And so we see this here with this map. Somebody may have at one point done some surveying or done some engineering work, because this is beautifully drawn out. It's once again a nice, just stark ink with the shading done and primarily in line art. But you see this whole map. I would love. I'm really excited actually to open it up and look at it, because we have all of these little areas that are unto themselves. And just looking at this map without ever knowing anything about the book itself, I have never heard of this book before, never seen anything about it. I can tell you right now, I want to look at it. I want to read this book because it has a desert waste. It has the woods masterless in it. And of course, here you have the little images of the trees and things. And then you have the city of the sundering flood with its wonderful bay and its little inset that you have, which shows all the houses and the bridges that cross the river. You also have this wonderful 8-pointed compass, actually, with north, south, east, and west, although it doesn't seem to be designated except for a point just right at the north. But this is such a fantastic way to give an overview of an entire book. Instead of having just an illustration of, say, one scene from a book, it's an entire world laid out for you. And it gives you an idea of where people go and the adventures they're going to have, because here we have the rivers and the mountains and something. When you see the desert waste, you know that there's got to be something wonderful there. The castle of the fish, what is that even? It's over here to the left, and I'm seeing that, or to the right, and I'm like, I really want to find out now why there's a castle of fish there. So this is a wonderful example of what worlds open up for you. And this is one of the earlier known versions of a fantasy map. So there will be others. But this may be instrumental in influencing this style of influencing Tolkien's work, because Tolkien starts off with some very early maps. And I'm not using a lot of them because I want to make sure we use anything that's related to Tolkien that's fair use, because there's a big, estate that's involved with his work. But I do have an example of Tolkien's work, and it's actually one that was done by him and later on was redone by his son. And if we'll look to Tolkien, it'll be down there where it'll say Christopher and J.R.R. Tolkien. And let's go ahead and put that one up for now. And there you go. Now this is a topographic map. And I love these. I said my father was an engineer. We see once again the symbols that we talked about. Those little spiky things that are over there in your left hand top corner are the symbols for a marsh. And so we have the marsh, and this is just one point of this fantastic map that Christopher Tolkien put together out of his father's work from his father's own graph paper. And he took several wonderful maps and created this body of work. And Christopher Tolkien is actually extremely instrumental in keeping Tolkien's work going. And his work on these maps, in this case, it looks like we have the plain of Udon. We have that's the mountain, and we have the plateau of Gorgoroth. We see here this actually very technical map, and it has all of those topographic lines, so you can see where the different peaks are. And Tolkien was so thorough in his work. He would create these extensive maps so he could plot out where Frodo was going, where Bilbo was headed. Any of these journeys that they did, they have the maps to go with them. And I love this one because I love topographic maps. I use them frequently when I'm looking at my own land. I will go to Google Earth and then I will transpose it over a topographic map so I can actually see what the rise of the land is and where there might be, places where it's more likely to have flooding or things like that. So I love seeing all of these little symbols on this one. And this is just a fantastic example of that work that Tolkien, both he and his son, did to help capture that world. And he doesn't do it after the fact. He's actually doing it beforehand. He created these maps while he was working. And I wanted to ask you guys, because I want to stop it right here for just a minute and say, when you're working on your maps, do you work on your maps before you start writing, or do you kind of do them afterwards? Do you wait till afterwards when you've already got the path set, or do you actually start off with a map?
My first stories, I started off without a map, but I had an idea of what the land looked like pretty well, because that's actually a big portion of it. I actually have my own little map here. Let me see if I can bring it up. But it was a big portion of it because I think I mentioned before, I wanted my world to be a bit of a sandbox. Mm-hmm. For that, geography was key. Because for it to be a sandbox, I had to create a world that could withhold a multitude of stories. And a part of those stories were very much going to be scientific in nature, sci-fi, as well as like Conan-ish stories, anything that could come to mind, anything that I'd want to write, that I just wanted to get it out there and write. And that's kind of how I went about creating my map at first, after I had written my first story, because one thing that I took advantage of when first starting off to build a world, to write in a world, is the vagueness thereof. You can write your most abstract stories in a vague world, but the more you give it life, the more that world comes to life, the more regulations there are. The almost in a sense, not the less you can do, but the more you have to follow along the way. The nature of the world comes to life. And for that, I had to separate my very strange world. This is the map right here. It is a very strange world because you have
So cool.
very different kingdoms from each other, and the world itself isn't necessarily a world. It is on a endless plane of absolute darkness, except for this one area where rays of light just brighten it up. And these are the lands of light right here. And the way I went about creating it was separating each of the kingdoms, putting them in their own particular corners, and sort of making the mix and flow of them be sort of the in-between spots. And the closer you get to the heart of the kingdoms, the more their own rules and regulations and culture sort of dominate. Like in the middle here, where it says the border valleys, these are the two kingdoms: the kingdom of Whitlow, which is over here in the desert area, and then the kingdom of Dune, which is right here by the Pearly Mountains, which is more of a springtime area. And I separated it appropriately because of how different both of them were. I needed to create a lot of boundaries here, as this kingdom up here is pretty much all by itself, and these are the much more secluded guys, but they also have pretty much all this top ground to themselves. So honestly, I completely forgot what your question was. I feel like I just went on a little rampage here. What was your question again?
This is cool. No, was actually just, do you start off with a map, or do you create it as you do it afterwards?
At first I did, and afterwards, I actually have a printed out version of this map. And whenever I don't necessarily know what to write, I unfold it and I look at that physical map in my hands.
That's amazing. So that's like part of
yeah, I guess it's a part of the writing process when I don't know what to write. And I look at this map, I look at all the different areas, and in my mind, I know who populates those areas. I know, where all the different creatures are. I know where all the different kingdoms, sort of how they operate. I know
that full screen. Can you make it full screen for a minute?
Yeah, my bad. I didn't realize it wasn't full screen.
It's fantastic. People are wanting to see it. They're looking at it, and I think a full screen would be awesome right now.
There you go. Okay.
Awesome sauce. Okay, no, that's perfect. Notice now, once you know now, who did the map for you? Did you draw it, or did you have some?
I hired someone years ago, and I've long since forgot their name.
Okay, this is a really great little map. Now, notice how much it looks like the previous examples I showed you. In fact, that's the reason we stopped there. I kind of had an idea about your map, and so I think you've shown it to me before. And this is such a classic little map. It has all of the usual symbols, like we talked about, the geologic symbols, the water waves in there. I like the fact that some of the little islands kind of look like paw prints. I don't know, maybe it meant to do that or not, but it looks like little paw prints. But you have this beautiful classic map, and it sets up the entire world, not just for your readers, but for you. You're literally able to lose yourself in your own map. And Black Knight, what do you think about this? Because this is such a classic. Literally, I could have put this in a book from 1900 or put it from 2000, and nobody would ever know the difference. It looks so classic and so pretty. It's just a neat little map.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. It carries the aura of these really cool old school maps, which in most cases they were like ink. This looks like a mixture of ink and pencil, maybe.
Mhm.
I don't know. But it's great. I wish I had one, but sadly, in my case, it's all digital. Um, a friend and a reader of mine did of the couple of maps that they have, and they have to answer your question. I began with yeah, I began with um, a hastily drawn map on a very old piece of paper,
Uh-huh.
and usually like um, it had like some of the zones, the areas you can see, um, and basically I started with the territory of the imperial monarchy, the Terran controlled territory, and I added all of the major powers around it, and as you can see, Mr. Brushface added like a couple of logos which he designed um, with
Nice.
my input. The one in the top left is like the Starblood logo, which is they they label themselves like all of the allied, the tiny regional powers who are allied with the Terrans and the Killer Imperium. They label themselves as Starblood. So even though they're not of the same species, uh, they have developed very close, tight cultural bonds. Of course, they have the unique culture, but you can see how close are they, um, and yeah, it's the galactic core is where all the slaving scum live. That's they assume, yeah, they assume themselves superior. They're the older race, the elder races, who rule pretty much over the like the most juiciest part of the galaxy, and the like the outside of the spiral arm they consider like the boonies, and basically the Terran monarchy is in the boonies. We are in the fucking boonies, and yeah, it's like ooh, this is like this is this place where the barbarians live, with all the anomalies, and I have a map sign for the different anomalies, but sadly he could not add it because we lost contact. He was deployed somewhere,
Oh, wow.
and in a few years, I think, um, we have no contact. I have no contact with him. But just as we saw on these old maps, even though they show land and rivers and mountains and swamps and etc. So this one has the different. I had a couple of other signs for, let's say, a wormholes, like the important wormholes, the
Uh-huh.
most important ones, which interconnect a number of other wormholes, and then I had the signs for the anomalies, the anomalous zones, because you have a lot of anomalous zones, and it's like someone, let's say, a senator living in ancient Rome, looking at, let's say, a map of Africa, and they look at this at place, and they see like I don't know, sand, desert on the map, or let's say swamps and something, and they're like, "Ew, we're not going there. It's icky." The core galactic races are exactly the same with this, but us humans, we don't have any other choice than to try and colonize and terraform pretty much barren rocks or just hollow out asteroids and build villages. Oh yeah, I forgot. I have the sign for a terraformed asteroid too. So
Oh,
one
really?
day, I hope, yeah, one day it's a little um, it's like the sign of a cave with a small tree inside,
Ooh.
because it's a hollow. It's basically it's a cave in space that you just dig into the asteroid. You mine all everything that you could mine, and you hollow it out, uh, and then you build everything inside. Build cities, roads, um, farms. If you can do it, like, I mean, you can, but yeah. Can you show the next map, James? Yeah. So this is like with with the squiggly writing. This is where we wrote the different powers, and if you enlarge it, you can see, let's say, the center, the galactic center, where the GA, the Galactic Assembly races are. You can see the Kilra, Imperium, everything. It's pretty much this is where the most important things happen, and yeah, I don't need to add anything else, except maybe, let's say, make specific zoomed maps for the different territories, for different imperiums, with all the map signs and the wormholes and the important stars and such, which there are, I think, Dyson spheres too. So the Dyson spheres, they are a circular symbol with a black sun inside, because it's a sphere built around the sun. So there are a number of Dyson spheres. If you want me to talk more about them, but otherwise, you can see, when if you zoom in, you can see that, uh, let's say, I don't know why. Yeah, you can see the Kiora Imperium, which is in blue. You can see the Allied territories with pink. You can see the Tazaran Imperium on the side, which it is quite huge. The Tazaran Imperium, um, and so the other powers too. But yeah, that's pretty much. We could have tried to expand on it. The problem is that I lost contact with him, and I hope he's fine. He's okay. He's been dropping videos on YouTube, so yeah. I hope that one day I can reconnect with him, and we can continue working on this project. It was quite glorious. And yes, I did not start with the map. I
You say you added it late. Okay,
yeah,
let's leave.
I had a vague a map, like just a outline of the map,
Uh-huh.
and then I just added more and more and more later. So that
Okay,
is
let's leave that one up for just a minute because this is a perfect segue. James, put your map next to Black Knights for just a minute. Let's put your map up there and show your wonderful work that you have for just a second, because I want to show these two together, because this is how much that map making has changed. Do you have yours available, James? And can you show it right next to that? So here we have the two different, basically two different styles, and there's a stark difference between these two. One is the traditional map, the one that's this beautiful ink version. It's black and white, so it can be easily reprinted in books, for instance. That's one of the main reasons we have the line work maps usually, is because they translate well. And then we have this glorious color map that's made with of the galaxy, and one is of the line art one is of this beautiful little kingdom with all of its tiny delicate details, and then you have this expensive it just going out into the millions of miles map of the galaxy itself, but still a map with all of these different kingdoms and areas and things in it. Each one is a design of the maker's mind, and I want you to think about that for just a minute, because we're going to go there again in a second. That is the inside of your mind. Look at that thing right there for a minute, James. That's what the inside of your head looks like. Black Knight, that's what the inside of your head looks like. Each one very different. One is in the details and the little things that pop up all around it, and the other one is in this ever expanding universe that's spiraling outward into these greater and greater details. But each has its own charms and its own beauties. The difference between the two is one is traditional media also, and the other one is digital media. And when we're talking about digital media, as we've moved forward, we have first started off with our line art with the cartographic maps and the geographic survey maps. And we move towards this digital map, which is very free-flowing, very representational in some ways, but it's also much larger, much more abstract in the way it looks at the world. The difference is, as we moved into digital art, fans could start to make maps. Now, people had made maps before with ink and paper, and we're going to go to the one that I sent you, James, which is of Huckleberry Finn, and we're going to start there. I've got 3 maps from Huckleberry Finn, but they're not maps that were drawn by Mark Twain. They are maps that were actually drawn by a fan of Mark Twain. And I'm going to go back to make sure I get his name right, because it's important to me that I always try to make sure I've got everybody's names put on there properly. But his name, is Dan, let me make sure I get it right. Dan Harmon from LitHub. It was 2015. And he made these beautiful full color maps, almost like postcards. And this is where fan art starts to take you. And we see these maps of the Mississippi as Huckleberry Finn moves down the river. And because something that I dearly love, Mark Twain. Are you able to get those up, James?
Ooh.
Yes, these are gorgeous. Now I'm not
these
sure.
Ones.
I believe these are mixed media. There's still this, but this is at the beginning of we have the digital age, so it's probably maybe digitally enhanced. He may have done some of it, but it does look like traditional media. But here we're now able to go into full color maps, kind of like with a cartographic, and this is almost a cartographic map. It has some very detailed. It's absolutely gorgeous, and this man was a fan of it, and he wanted to make an actual cartographic map of what Huckleberry Finn's adventure looks like. The reason these are so dear to me is because I read Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer as a child, and they were once again made on real world locations. Even though there was fantastic elements to them, they were fiction, they still used the real world around. And much like Watcher of the Damned, using those real maps helped Mark Twain. He knew the river intimately. When he wrote of the river, he wrote of his own experience as a riverboat captain. And so this is how the world looked to Mark Twain as he writes his stories. And I'm sure he actually used his own maps from his previous experience to write his stories. And so maps become an integral part of his world. And to see this laid out like it is, and we'll switch, there's actually 2 more in this series, and I want to sort of pull it back out. We can see where they have, he has some like the wreck of the Walter Scott, for instance, is amazing to see that big old riverboat just sort of sitting there like that. And we have the houses with with death on them and everything like this. It's just amazing to look at this and see it. And there's actually a little Huck Finn and Joe on there, actually down there by the word St. Louis. Let's go to the second slide on this one in this series. So as we go through this whole series and we see these beautiful color maps, these are the cartographic maps that that a lot of us love so much, because we can literally take the trip in our mind. And one of the things I love about these maps is after the book is read, you can go back and just look at the map and relive the adventure. And I don't know if you've ever done that in your real life, where you had a trip and you went back and you looked at a picture of the road you took, or you looked at the maps you had when you were going that way, or maybe it's still in your phone. We used to have to print them out or had to take them with us sometimes. But they became a memory of the trip. Well, in this situation, a fan of Twain's work loved it so much that he created these extensive, beautiful maps. And James, can you put up those other two up there with it also?
Yeah, let me go ahead.
Yeah, they'll be kind of small, but these are so beautiful. And the work, this is the best of both worlds. You see the color work and the line work to create these gorgeous pictures. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to see if I can find out a little bit more about Mr. Harmon's map here. I've got his, I think I've got his Mapping Huckleberry Finn. It says Mapping Huckleberry Finn's River Journey. And that was actually in 2015. And so I'm going to see what he says about Mr. Harmon. He doesn't really say that much about Mr. Harmon itself. This appears to me to be a mixed media image. So I'm going to say it probably is like color pencils, maybe some paints or markers. And as we're looking at all of these gorgeous maps and you see them all there, you can go through the entire book in your mind, just looking at these beautiful maps. You don't even have to go back and read it. You're seeing everywhere he went. You could actually travel this route. Now, some of the features of the river may have changed. One thing about the Mississippi and other rivers like it, they will change course from time to time, especially if there's a big flood, if there's an earthquake, as in the case of the New Madrid earthquake of 1812, which actually changed the course of the Mississippi River. But so you have these beautiful maps showing what it looks like from the book's perspective. You could probably lay these over Google Maps now and actually come up with the real layout of the river. And so with all of this work done here, and yes, I do believe this is actually mixed media. So it would be a traditional physical media, probably, maybe with a little digital enhancement, but very little, if any. It's just absolutely wonderfully done. It even retraces their steps. And I love this very representational, very cartographic. He did a magnificent job with it. The colors pop. Even you can tell where what he did really well was that he actually put those pathways in there where you can see them clearly, even with all the other busy things that are going on in the houses and the trees and everything else. We still see the path very clearly. So I love this setup. It's just enormously beautiful maps. I wish that I could get to the largest versions of them. It appears that they have been taken down or they're no longer on that server. I'm sure we can find them somewhere. But that's the first one I wanted to show you, because these are made after the fact by fans who loved these books so much that they wanted to share them. And now we're going to go to one that's actually in the making of it. And I'm hoping that we'll see something more of it. I'm using this one because it is free on the internet. But from the Dragon Riders of Pern series, I don't know if any of y'all have read Anne McCaffrey's work. Have either one of you all read it?
I personally haven't, no.
Yeah. The Dragon Riders of Pern?
Yes.
Be a second. Give me a second. I want to check something.
It's this map, correct?
Yes. It's just a green. For a lot of us, this is one of our first introductions, really, to restarting the dragon craze, which is back in the 80s and 90s, 70s, I think, when it starts off. And she had this incredible, rich world, and a lot of people wanted a map with it. And I believe that she had some representations in the books, but her books were largely unillustrated. It had cover art, of course. Her son, in 2010, started to work on a map of her work, much like Christopher Tolkien, when we talked about him working on his father's legacy, her son actually went out and started to make this digital map. And so he's actually working on this from obviously, trying to create this beautiful map for his mother's world. And it's very simple in some respects, but then you start zooming in on these coastlines. And this is somebody went out of their way to make this wonderful rivers and all of these bays. And it doesn't have anything put on it yet, but this is where the world is starting to open up into our ability to have fan-made art that was being shared. And a lot of fans love making maps. You really know you've made it when a fan will make a map of your work. And in this case, Anne McCaffrey's fans were begging for these maps. They wanted them so much because for whatever reason, we as readers love to see what we're reading about. And just like I showed you with that beautiful map of Huckleberry Finn's work, Huckleberry Finn's journey, we have this just a very first hints of a base for a map. And but it's still so detailed and rich. And it looks like a real world. It's like you can see the coastlines and the bays and all the valleys. This is the beginning of somebody putting it down onto paper to being able to live that world again. Our fans love our maps because they want to be able to see the world that they're entering. And it draws in our readers. And so that was one of the reasons why I started off wanting to use a map with Watcher of the Damned. And from the very first book, we introduced it, but I decided to go a different route with it. Rather than have a map that is made by someone else, I wanted the characters themselves to draw the maps. So each map is drawn in a different style with different fonts and a different handwriting. I wanted them to be made by the characters because in this world of Watcher of the Damned, because of the dystopian nature of it, maps are considered to be intelligence. And in fact, if you've ever read some of the spy literature from the past, map makers were considered to be dangerous. They could go in and they could see where you were putting your facilities, or they could see where you might have your soldiers stationed, and they would draw maps and take them with them. So in Watcher of the Damned, the system doesn't want the citizens to have maps. Why? Because that is a tool for freedom. It would let you know, just like when we're reading and Black Knight talked about, you can see where you're going. You can kind of see where you want the story to go ahead, or where they might travel. People use maps to plan their lives, to plot where they're going to go. Try living without a map, and you'll see how hard it gets very fast. And in fact, many of us are so dependent now upon GPS that we no longer know how to travel without it. We don't know, a lot of people no longer know how to read an actual map. And so in Watcher of the Damned, that happened. Before technology was destroyed, people lost the ability to read maps. They didn't have paper ones. And when their technology died and their rings died, there was no longer any maps that they had available. And so it became proprietary information. Now, there's a simple little map, and it actually looks like it's on a ring binder, and that's the one you've got up right now. That's the Watcher's own map. He's going to draw this in the first book. And he does it very hastily. So it's done with little cartoons. And I actually drew that. Some people actually asked me if I actually did that on a ring binder. And no, I actually drew the rings on there to make it look like it was his ring binder. And so I was kind of proud of the fact that somebody actually thought that was real.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's I just went ahead and drew it on there so that way you could see sort of his own little handwriting, his own little map that he has. And I wanted to make it as fast as possible. And it's actually based in part on my own father's belongings that I found after his passing, where he had a map that was drawn on a linen piece of paper. It was a tourist map of Oahu prior to the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And it shows the harbor with all the ships in it, shows little sailors and people, and they're all in cartoon style. And he was actually a World War II veteran, and he was in Oahu before the bombing of Pearl Harbor. And so he had this wonderful map. And so I based it in part on that map, using that style and using the, I had to trace Texas. Texas is hard to draw, y'all. I don't know why it's so hard to draw.
Because it's huge.
I know. It was just kind of weird shape. You can't quite get it right. It'll look funny. And so I did trace it on there. I actually went ahead and traced the Tejas Co-op because I wanted to have an accurate representation for myself of the boundaries of this world. they are in between the two rivers, the Brazos River on the west and the Trinity River on the east. They're bounded by the Gulf of what at the time was Gulf of Mexico. And this is where you always run into things. Right now we're calling it the Gulf of America, but on some old maps it might be called the Gulf of Mexico. And then you have on at the very top, you would have the Trinity River as it breaks off into the different branches of the East Fork and the West Fork of the Trinity, and just a very narrow place. So it's bounded in by these rivers on all sides, or by bodies of water. That if you had no dams, they actually might be very hard to get across, especially if you are having to fight monsters and different kinds of creatures. And so I put this on here as what he knew about the world around him, a very limited look. He knows where some of the plantations are. He knows where there might be horses to the north, or where there's a chupacabra colony that's just to the south. You can see the little chupacabra there. And so I drew these little things on there, just like my father's map had on them, of the little cartoon characters where the afterling's lair might be. But this is an actual, pretty accurate representation of where these events take place in the world. And so I put that together with it specifically, not just for me, but for him, because he wants to know where he's going, and he's making an attempt to try to scrawl this down about the world around him. And now that he's free, he's able to take the time to write this out really quickly and hide it. And he's going to use this throughout his journey to try to get him where he needs to go. Now, as we go forward in the book, you have this sort of simple little map with the hand-drawn symbols. We're going to go to the next one, and that's actually the map of Purgatory. And it looks like a city map. It'll be the next one down. I think we have it'll show a, you should see, it'll actually say Purgatory on it. That one right there, yes. Now, this one was done in a classic draftsman style. I wanted to do it that way. Once again, my father was a draftsman. He was a design engineer, and he had a lot of maps and things that he used. He had a lot of books of calligraphy. Now, this is it is a place on a real map. However, because I didn't want people to actually go there and maybe plague somebody in the future, I have such great hopes for Watcher of the Damned. I actually, considered whether or not somebody might be living there. And so I actually inverted a real feature and inserted it into a body of water that is a local body of water. And so you're seeing the actual map, and then it is inverted and reversed. So I could create this feature, and it's the city of Purgatory. And it's one of the only cities that's actually laid out like this that's left in the world. All these people have come together from all over the co-op and from all over, some of them all over Texas, who have made their way down here. And this is the only one that they know of. And so somebody has taken the time to create this forbidden map. They've taken great pains to get this map put together to make this happen. And so and it's actually a character in the book, which you have not met yet if you haven't read through book 4. If you've gone to book 4, you actually will meet the character, but you won't yet know who it is that drew the map, because they're taking their life in their hands to go in by night and light a candle and to draw out these features. And they will also continue to draw maps for us. And so this character has the cartographic knowledge as an artist to create this map. And I love this map because I actually had a chance to create some world building here, making some deltas, the swamps. Once again, on this one, if you can zoom in, you'll see, I don't know, because it just depends on if you've got a touch map or not. But if you're able to touch, you can actually see that I've included the swamp symbols. I've included the tree symbols. And in using this, I've used the topography of this particular place to create ravines and the way that the houses would be laid out in this particular feature. And so we have all of the different particular emblems and everything on there. And I really had a lot of fun with this. And this was actually done in pencil. It was just done freehanded in pencil, and with just a very light, taking the map and actually putting it over the top of it. And then everything else was filled in on the back side of it. And this is right before I started to kind of lose some of my eyesight. So I'm really pleased with the fact I was able to get something done like that with just I said it was my 3 Ps phase, where I did it's pencil, paper, and a pink pearl eraser. And that was it. No ink or anything like that. And it's just done all in graphite with very tiny, fine points on my pencils. So I love doing that. I decided to leave in the lines because I wanted it to look like a draftsman had come in and done it. And I really liked that style. But as we go to the next style, now you're going to see it change, because now I have to move to digital media. I had to do that because I was losing my eyesight. I have a degenerative condition called keratoconus, which actually changes the way. And we're going to go do the one before that. There's actually one that's the inside. It's actually looks like it's on an old napkin. It's all blurry and blotchy. Yeah, that one right there. There you go. We're going to go there first. And that one is from Trail of Travail. You see the other one actually in Purgatory and Paradise, which is book 4 and 5 and 6 has the Purgatory image. And it also has the other maps as well. This one, if we can sort of pull that up full screen. This is actually a mind map. Now, this one I had to be careful with because it's actually a real feature. There is a strip mine in my neck of the woods. And I didn't want to use the exact features of it, but I did use the layout. And I said, you know what? I don't want to get in trouble for showing something. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe somebody might say I was, spying. So instead, I went ahead and designed some features into it. I used the symbols from my dad's book, actually, the cartographic book that he had, and put those in. So you see the intermittent streams. We can see that there's a swamp over here. Once again, a legend, and it's done with a back slanting a script on it because that's the way that character writes. And it's really hard to do your handwriting differently each time. I don't know if anybody else tries to do this where you change your handwriting for a particular character. But in this case, this character who's drawing this is a different character. And he's one of the only ones that has knowledge of this place. This is an old map that's supposed to be drawn on a napkin. Have any of you ever actually drawn something on a bar napkin?
Yes. When I was a kid, I used to draw on some napkins.
Yes. So this is done on a bar napkin where they scrawled one down, trying to tell somebody about it. And of course, it's been all blurry and blotchy since then. And so this is inserted into the book. And each of these maps, when they show up, there is a story in the story where you will see where the character actually will pull out something or present something and say, here's what I have. So it's not just included with the book, it is a part of the story. And so this character's, this is actually the Travail, which is a real life strip mine. In this case, in the story, it is an abandoned strip mine with parts of it on fire, much of it not known what is over in the other areas. Very little of it has been mapped since the happening where the catastrophic event took place. And so everybody's, they don't know what's in this place, but there's these giant trenches. That little slash that you see there that has the dots in the middle of it actually is a symbol for trenching in mining. And so there's a massive trench there. We know that. And we know that if you have that sort of zigzag line that you have over here, that's actually the symbol for electrical lines. It's the swag of each line as it comes across the electrical pathways and the towers that we have. And so you have the line of towers. You actually have a power plant, which has a real life analog in it in the real world. And so I tried to incorporate these things in a near future Texas and put them in this catastrophic burnt out landscape with some dude drunkenly drawing it on a bar napkin. And I really wanted that drunken dude to draw a bar napkin, so I did. So that way I could also make it where it's sort of messy looking and I didn't care. But we go to the next level, and that will be the next map on the series. And this is where we move over to a different character again. It is the character that brought you the Purgatory map. Now, this was hard to do for me because I had to try to draw it in the same style, but I no longer can use pencil and paper because of my eyesight. And I moved over to Procreate. Now, that the last bar napkin one was also done on Procreate, which has a backlighting feature, which means I can see things really well. So I'm able to make it very large. I can make details and everything else. If you look in this top corner, actually top left hand, you can see, it's not really a sort of blurry, but you'll be able to see where the other map has been inserted. So I was able to take and Procreate and put the previous map and insert it into this map. So now we've expanded the world out. So there's now the abandoned coal mine, the strip mine, and it's in the landscape along with the Devil's Highway, which is, of course, running. It's actually old I-45. Which is now called the Devil's Highway in their world because of all the wrecks and the different, shards of glass and carbonite that are all over the roadway and making it very dangerous, bodies everywhere because everybody knows I-45 is back-to-back traffic all the time. And so what do you happen when you have the apocalypse hit right in the middle of rush hour, you're going to have a real big mess, and so you can't use the road. So it's otherwise known now as the Devil's Highway. So I had to change my technique a little bit. I went ahead and used actually a picture of graph paper and did it. I wanted to do it in a cartographic representation, but also because they don't know what the world looks like around them. They have this other old map, and then they have an idea of where the map used to go and how the road might be laid out, but they don't know anymore what's out there. They have these 50-year-old, 100-year-old maps. And one of the things I did incorporate in this story, I went back to original maps from the 1800s to find out what the landscape looked like in this portion of central Texas. By going back and using those old maps, I could tell you where the rivers used to run because the mine actually interrupted some of those rivers. It created dams, and it shut off a lot of those creeks, some of them which were quite large and would seasonally be navigable. And I brought them back for the story because you have the degraded landscape where the dams are going to break and people are no longer going to be maintaining them. And so I have that in this story, and I wanted to make sure that I could put it in there accurately. So if you're lucky enough and you get a chance to see these, if you went back and compared them to maps from the 1890s for my area that I'm in, and if you read the story, you'll actually know where this is taking place. I don't say a lot on air because I don't want to get doxxed by somebody crazy, but in this case, you could actually go there and you would be able to see that these rivers were ones that have disappeared now. They're no longer there, but they were real. And so I was really excited to do those maps. It's become an adventure for me to be able to open up this world that I would have never discovered without that love of maps. Literary maps led me to rediscover what my world looked like before we settled here. And it was just amazing to see that.
Well, that's awesome. Um, I I'm unable to draw stuff. I mean, I scribbled as a kid, but I can't. I mean, I guess if I put enough time into it, I would be able to do something, but nothing close to what you were able to do. No, um, of course, I compensate with different bits of additional world building, which help. In the case of these galactic maps, I have a couple of notes here. And if you
You
want
guys
me,
actually scored with your artists because each
yeah,
one, like I said, it's wonderful. I'm looking at a map of James's mind when I see this little quaint map with all of its perfect little lines and everything, or your map right night with the big swirling worlds and gases and galactic arms that stretch millions of miles. It's so extraordinary to see how different our own visions of our own work are, even in our own minds, how different we are from each other, and that style and how it fits.
and that's the idea. I mean, this is how um, this is not just how, but this is why we have different things, and why we have lots and lots of interesting things, because our minds work in a different way. We absorbed perhaps the same information, had the same stimuli. We process them differently, and we express our accumulated knowledge through a different viewing lens. And yeah, as I speak about it, I just have to talk a little bit about how exactly were some of these galactic maps attained, created. And I will just share some of the notes, some of the world building notes that I have for the maps, which are not huge. But so it has been a couple of galactic cycles, and each cycle is lasts millions of years, and many civilizations rise and fall, and of course some of them leave behind them what the most important thing is about the stellar um, empire. Well, the maps, of course, the maps. That's one of the perhaps most precious things, just as we already talked about it, and you especially so, that maps, they have entire divisions of spies. Some are devoted to creating fake maps, and especially of the stellar roads, the wormholes, the hyperspace routes, because you cannot just like jump, clap your hands and oh, just jump over there, and it's not that easy. But um, part of these maps, part of the current maps that they are just like in our own world here. We have old maps, let's say the famous Piri Reis, Admiral Piri Reis map. I don't know if you know about it. And some of the more modern maps, they were based on these maps. And later we have different technologies. Like right now we have LiDAR technologies, and we can map what's under the canopy. Let's say talking about the Amazonian rainforest. They have airplanes right now are flying over it, and they show like a bunch of ancient cities of the Amazonian people, which they had like a huge civilization. There are like hundreds of cities and stuff. So how does this work in the Star Shuttle universe? So part of the maps, as I said, they are based on the old maps from the dead galactic civilizations, but these have to be checked, because things in the galaxy change. Things in hyperspace do not remain in complete standstill. There are anomalies and new wormholes forming, and like electrogravitic stuff, etc., etc. So a planet might not be perfectly exactly where it was, like let's say a few million years ago. There might not be a fucking planet. There might be something else. You don't know. So they had to check this out, and then to actually map areas that they have no idea what there is. Well, you can do it the old-fashioned way. You can send a probe which is controlled by a quote-unquote AI algorithm, highly advanced algorithm. But the problem is that these algorithms, they are flawed. They do not see things and perceive things like a sentient mind would. And in many cases, they can provide you with just like some data, but not the entire picture. They cannot show you the entire picture. Yes, you can see some holographic pictures and maybe some scan data from the scanners, but it's and you can also consider the fact that in some cases these programs, they have like a lapse, um, which happens to them when they are not being maintained. There is no like biological sentient to maintain them, and they have this lapse, and sometimes the data which they take has degraded, and yeah, that's a problem. So you need an actual eyes there, and this information is then added biologically by tapping a hollow keyboard and adding stuff to what has the really already efficient mapping algorithm, mapping AI that did stuff that compile the data, which is of great help, of course. And then you have the remote viewers, you have the telepaths, because we have telepaths in Star Shutter, and in some cases they could see over many star systems away, especially some of the highly specialized telepaths. They could even see like seconds away or maybe minutes away in the future. Yeah, some of them could, or some of them could see a little bit in the past, but it's hard to do. And so by combination of all of these methods, you can map parts of the galaxy, areas of interest to you, which then would be supremely useful for any let's say colonization, resource gathering, trade, and just plain moving about through the area, and some who did just use only one of these ways of mapping. Let's say just send probes, millions of probes, automatic probes, or just send people without the advanced machining aid of that digital assistance, or just use telepathic probing. Oh yeah, we don't need to waste money. We have these like brainy guys and gals. Oh, just use them to map the galaxy for us. We don't need to explore personally. And what happens then? Well, they sit in their starship, they punch in some coordinates, and they fly into hyperspace, and they either do not exit hyperspace and rot forever there, or they kind of bump into something or become part of, let's say, the few reserves of the sun. So yeah, just like in our world, if you have an grossly inaccurate map, you could end up in, let's say, a nice area full of quicksand, or a swamp, or let's say something else, like, I don't know, a dangerous mountain, which is prone to like rock slides or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I hear you. We're down to our last 10 minutes here. So while we give our final thoughts on where people can find us, RH Snow, why don't you start us off?
Let me touch on something, because you guys said something really important, especially Black Knight said I can't draw. Now, you guys found wonderful artists, and that's a fantastic thing. But for a lot of people, it's really intimidating to first start off with a pencil or something to try to put this on paper. So I want to go over a couple of things for those people out there who want to make their own maps. There's two ways you can do this. First of all is just get a pencil, make circles. Start off with a circle of where the world starts and put that right in the center, or put it in a corner if you have to go from one point to the next and it's a long way. And then I want you to just make circles around the page of where you think it's sort of like this would be over to the right, maybe to the east, or this would be over to the west. And you just put those circles out there, very vague. Then you draw your little pathways between them. There's a map, guys. It's that simple. But for some people, they don't like to pick up the pencil, or they feel uncomfortable with trying to draw it. That's the way I started off with Watcher of the Dam. Literally was circles and just lines going between them of where I'm going to start here and I'm going to go to this other place. But you can also do it in Minecraft. Now, how many of you have ever actually played Minecraft?
No.
Yeah, I checked it out before.
Okay. Minecraft is interesting because it's sort of a 3D representation. If you go into creative mode, and if you are a player in Minecraft, you can go ahead and go into creative mode, raise up overhead so that way you can move quickly, and you can get it open in the flat map where you start off with a creative. And then you can put a block where you want something to be. Just start off with a block on one point, then put another block over there where you're going to have your next, let's say, a city. You can create that little pathway between them. Then by laying down other blocks, you can make a 3D representation of it. You can actually start to build things like a rudimentary set of mountains or ponds or a river. And you can make a very small, crude map that you can use later to try to represent to an artist what you would like to do. Keeping these notes or having some sort of way of symbolizing, you take a screenshot of it. You can have that, then you can actually go to an artist who might be able to help you to create maps of your own. Because these are so important. When we're creating these worlds or when somebody else is reading them, we love our maps. It helps us to define our worlds in a more beautiful and more orderly fashion where we know where we've been and we know where we're going. And so I want to encourage each one of you, try to make your own maps, even if it's just very simple. And who knows, maybe you can find a great artist like James did or like Black Knight. The wonderful images that you saw here today, a lot of them were just made by people with a pencil in their hand wanting to scratch out a design. Don't be afraid to try your hand at maps to enhance the worlds that you are building with your writing. Or if you love a story and you really want to do it, try to create a map of the story you've just read and see if that doesn't help you enjoy that story even that much more. Because maps are a wonderful tool. They've been in use for hundreds of years with stories, and it's a tradition that it shows no sign of stopping. And I'm so thrilled to see everybody's maps here today. And you can find me at watcherthedam.com, where I have all of my books, of course, and have my upcoming book, Caballero del Camino, and the next book, which will be coming out, Hellbilly Highway, which are very heavy on maps because they are the road series. And so we have our roads involved. And you'll be seeing those maps included with each of the books. And I look forward to hearing what you guys think about our maps and Watcher of the Damned. And I love you. And I'm going to pass it off to the rest of y'all.
I will say I actually did make a quick, very cheap digital version of my
Did
map
you?
before passing it on
It helps
to the
so much.
actual artist. Yeah. Everything was pre-laid out. I was looking for it right now, seeing if I still had it. I should have it somewhere buried underneath all these files. But yes, I made a quick one on Photoshop, which is simple, like just using basic text, simple geometry, and color coding everything, and just letting the artist take it from there. So there was no real like geometry or I should say geography that the artist had to come up with in the details of the map. But Black Knight, where's your final thoughts? Where people can find you?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it's quite different and also similar. The way one would create the map and apply the knowledge from said map, unless you're like talking about something which is fundamentally different. But in our case, we are using the maps for world building, or we have created the maps after the world building to enhance it and to make things easier for our readers. And like, yes, you could, and perhaps you should try to doodle yourself and see what you can come up with. And even if later you find an artist, you can always share your sketch, your hand-drawn sketch with the artist, and use some a digital tool to give them an outline and say, well, this is where this kingdom lays, or this is where my version of Mordor is, and these are the swamps, or these are like the ancient battlefields, etc. So this is I do agree that if you can include a map in your book, you should. It's definitely something which the readers love. Just like, for example, the sci-fi nerds like me, we love our glossaries, and if I'm reading like a long series, I absolutely adore reading through the glossaries.
Oh, yeah.
And if I had like maps, ooh, that
Mhm.
would be awesome. So don't be afraid, map. And as to where you can find me on Substack. Let's say, for example, if you want to read the current stories and poems, you could go to theblacknight.substack.com, or go to Amazon, and you can find all of my Star Shattered books there. The two anthologies, which are a collection of stories also set in the Star Shattered universe. A Mandate of Sword and Railgun is the first one, and Blood of Tyrants is the second. And perhaps if you're liking Conan-esque style stories, you could try my two novellas about Vailin del Toril, which is my homage to Howard's Conan. Also, of course, with my twist, and set in the same universe of my books. So, well, that's that.
Awesome. Yes, and I'm James Esparza, a short story writer, and one of my stories is released today, early access for my subscribers. This is the cover right here, The Villain, episode 2. Currently, what I'm doing is I'm making really short stories between 2,000, 3,000, maybe a little towards 4,000 words each. Very easy to read, and I know people were talking about Kindle or Amazon removing the ability to download. All my stuff is comes with PDFs that are free to download. And that's on my Substack, worldwithoutendlore.com. But all of them also have a portion of the map. When I scroll down, you can see this portion. And then what I do is for every story, I will fixate the map on this first page where the story takes place. So this entire series takes place in the Kingdom of Whitlow, which is right here. But if we scroll all the way down where the final version of the map is right here, I put it at the bottom, at the way bottom of every story, with a little message as well. The Kingdom of Whitlow is pretty small in comparison to the overall landscape that we get to venture in. So I'm going to be creating short serialized stories that are just going to be released every other week. So subscribe at worldwithoutendlore.substack.com for more of that. So you get two installments of the same story in the same month. And currently I have 6 episodes already written, lined up to release. And the second one releases for my premium subscribers today. And its full free release will be in 15 days on the 1st of next month. You'll be getting that for free. But that's what I got going on. That's what everybody else here has got going on. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We know your time is important, as is our time. So we are out of here, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching this on the rerun, give us a like, leave us a subscription, and share this with your friends. Thanks again. We are out of here, people. Bye-bye now.